Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, the Leagues of Votann are adding their fourth character this patch. Today I'll showcase him, discuss his nuances and best uses. If you're here for the 15-second summary, Havyr is a melee bruiser. His active ability reduces the enemy armor for the remainder of the battle and does a bit of damage. His passive either suppresses the enemy or does an extra attack. He's likely to be a reasonably straightforward melee unit for the faction and has a PvP focus. He has some consideration in guild raid due to that extra attack and his crushing strike trait. Thanks as always to my Patreon and YouTube members for their support. Havyr is an uncommon unlock via 2-week hero release event. As usual, I have to commend Snowprint's art team who have done an incredible job with the model and animations. He has 3 traits. The League of Votann Faction trait, prioritized efficiency, alongside resilient and crushing strike. His stats on screen are at Diamond 3, and like the other Votann, he has a movement speed of 2. Like the other Votann, Havyr can also only equip a knife and has the Imperial Grenade as the crit booster slot. Towen, Tacticus Ambassador and friend, has helpfully done some analytics to help me create this radar chart for stats. Havyr's health stat is on the 61st centile, and armor is low on the 10th centile. His damage is impressive, 81st versus 0 armor and 97th versus infinite. His active ability is called Augmented Assault. Essentially, it deals eviscerating damage to that unit and reduces its armor for the remainder of the battle. It's sort of a free active because using it doesn't end Havyr's turn. The passive ability, Fury from the Delve, does one of 2 things. If the enemy is above 50% health, then Havyr's normal attack also suppresses the target. If the enemy is below 50% health, then our character makes an extra attack with eviscerating damage. The abilities seem straightforward at first glance, but let's look at the gameplay. The active in principle is simple enough. You run up, attack an enemy with your active, and then still have a free normal attack to attack with as you wish. The next clip shows how the active sequences the damage and armor reduction. Here, Zybeia is our enemy as she has really low armor. You can see based on the tooltip here that Havyr expects to do 2,000 to 3,000 damage. Zybeia has a base armor stat of around 1,000 damage. When Havyr makes his active attack, we can freeze frame to look at the numbers. It looks like the damage that he does is detailed by the active ability before reducing the target's armor. As you can see, the damage dealt is quite a bit lower than the 2,000 to 3,000 we saw earlier in the ability description. The passive is straightforward. If the target is at full health, then Havyr suppresses him with his attack. If below 50% health, then Havyr does another ability damage attack. It's fairly clear from the wording, but this does not function like Karn's attack. That is to say, if Havyr attacks and kills an enemy, his passive doesn't trigger against another nearby enemy, even if that secondary target is below 50% health. I guess the combo or synergy that this guy has is that you use his active to deal damage and reduce a target's armor. In an ideal world, that active reduces the enemy health to less than 50%, so that your follow-up hit is effectively the normal hit plus the passive hit against significantly reduced armor. In this clip, even against a ton of blocks, he one-shots Ragnar when everything lines up. I guess since we are in the realms of theory crafting, now would be a good segue to math and graphs, and for me to call in Tacticus Ambassador and friend Towen. The graphs on screen show how much damage the active does against each enemy unit with their own health and armor stats. I've included the 25% buff to damage from the faction trait since that will be available for Havyr in most instances. Remember that if the enemy is below 50% health, then Havyr will attack again through his passive. This dotted line here marks the units that Havyr would bring below 50% health with his active ability. You can see how against rarity matched enemies, this character achieves that quite reliably. Since we'll go on and discuss his use in Guild War later, Towen has also helpfully made the graph again, but this time with the 60% extra health from the 2 Medicaid buffed war buildings. This time the active does not bring many units below 50% health, as you can see here. The other potential point of interest is around raids. What makes this character interesting is that he has a passive which is a non-normal attack, and therefore benefits from Trajan's passive, i.e. the extra hits. Theoretically, the character could work in the new big hit team that involves Leviscus. The core of this team appears to be Carrion, Trajan, and Leviscus, and the flex slot options that are currently best in slot seem to be a combination of Gulgords, Asoth, and Vitruvius. The question that we have to ask ourselves is whether or not Havyr does more damage than either of those options. I have a replay here with Havyr against a Mythic 2 Sarek. We've never fought against a Mythic 2 Sarek on this map, but we have fought against him at Mythic 1, and when we did so, we had Adamantine 1 characters. The same team at the time did around 2.5 million damage. Against an upscaled Mythic 2 and Adamantine 2 characters, this team also achieves roughly similar scores. My takeaway from this is that Havyr is probably on par with the current options we have, provided the boss is already below half health. He might be better if you can truly optimize everything, but with how scarce resources are at the moment, I can't justify investment for those potential marginal gains. Anyway, the replay will play through for those that want it. Havyr does not release with a relic. It appears that the way forward in terms of new relic acquisition seems to be a combination of home screen events, campaign events, and the Rogue Trader shop. While we bring up relics, I thought it would be prudent just to remind people of this slide to highlight the characters who have a unique and shared relic in the game already. Havyr's Mythic Missions are on screen at the moment. I don't think any are particularly difficult in truth, but it will be a long time before anyone has him at Mythic to do the missions. I've been including LRE analysis and rankings for new characters as part of my showcases, but sadly Havyr simply doesn't have an LRE or Horde mode based kit. He could theoretically fill requirements for eviscerating damage, resilient, and crushing strike. All of those tracks already have better options apart from perhaps crushing strike, where the options are fairly limited. Nonetheless, I would put him in the OK tier for all of those tracks and wouldn't rush to build him for Horde mode. I haven't listed the cutoffs for ability thresholds here since you can get those fairly easily on any Tacticus website. On screen here is the character summary in my usual infographic style. Thanks once more to Towen, Tacticus ambassador and friend, for his help here. I'll leave this on screen for a bit for you to digest. We can conclude by assessing Havyr's usability. Let's start with Horde modes. Simply put, Havyr does not have the kit for this game mode. He isn't tanky or resilient enough, and outside of his active turn, can't kill 2 enemies per turn. He has weak defensive stats, but gains some resilience from the faction trait. He has a score of 2 here. What about War? Well, Havyr's kit is most obviously PvP centric, so you'd hope this is where he shines. He does have high burst potential with his active ability, and I kind of like how he becomes tougher to kill on the backswing due to how the faction trait works. I'll probably build him to gold 1 initially, and I've started with a score of 3 here. Finally, Raid. This is a really tough one, and I kind of wish I had more time to put Havyr through his paces against more different bosses. I think he either ends up amazing and replaces Asoth in the big hit team for bosses under 50% health, or he falls short. In either case, I don't think he is a big enough upgrade on what we have already, and the 50% conditional for the extra attack is off-putting for me. I don't have the resources to invest in someone who is effectively only used half the time in raids, therefore I've given him a 2.5 here. I'll maybe sign off there. I hope that was useful and you enjoyed playing with Havyr. Thanks as always to my Patreons and YouTube members for their support, and bye for now.